will be no foolish wand-waving or silly incantations in this class. As such, I don't expect many of you to appreciate the subtle science and exact art that is potion-making. However, for those select few who possess the predisposition, I can teach you how to bewitch the mind and ensnare the senses. I can tell you how to bottle fame, brew glory, and even put a stopper in death.
Your quest has now begun. Tune up, we'll show you how it's done. Tune up, tune up. Tune up, tune up.
Hey everybody, welcome back. It is time for another episode of Tabletop Tune Up, and boy, I've been looking forward to this one. I'm joined today by my co-host and my co-crafter of this podcast, Mark Lehman. How you doing, Mark?
I'm doing good. How you been?
I'm good. I'm actually, this is going to come out after I'm back from Gen Con. So it is in our next episode. I'll talk a little bit more about what we saw there and how that went. But I hope if any of you in our listening audience went, you had a great time. And maybe we'll see you there if we go in the future.
So jealous. I really wish I could have gone to Gen Con this year.
Yeah.
Just not in the books.
Sometimes the stars do not align.
No, they don't.
Let's see if I can find some dice to pick up for you.
Lord, I still have enough of my last adventure at Gen Con. I don't turn down dice, though.
That's true. Well, hey, everybody, you know what we're going to do? We're going to talk about crafting today. So
yeah,
this was something that was kind of inspired because, Mark, we've been looking at some different house rules for this new game you're running, and crafting can be kind of a slippery thing. You guys, we're going to be talking about this, I think, largely in D&D terms today, but I think it's interesting because crafting has a potential to be really kind of tough to balance. And so today we'll talk about why crafting is fun or interesting or valuable. We'll talk about what it contributes to your players. And then we'll talk about some of the stuff to think about when you're thinking about how to balance it so that it doesn't become either kind of overwhelming relative to the players' given powers as they go through the game, or kind of underwhelming. Players aren't going to bother if, frankly, they feel like they've got to put in all kinds of time and they have really marginal effects. So both of those are things we want to avoid. Mark, where should we start here? Why do we like crafting? You're an old school crafting guy.
Yeah. I do like crafting a lot. I think it's a lot of fun. It can add an element to the game. It allows players to have something that's very unique and personal to them. Generally, they're the drivers of the craft. They're the ones coming up with the ideas. Mm-hmm. I mean, all that being said, as a game master, I do like to create a lot of my own custom items and throw them into the game so the players have something unique. But yeah, they're not easy to do, Ben. Make no mistake.
I want to really narrow in here, right? So when we think about crafting, let's talk about two things. One, let's clarify, we're not just talking about items. We did a whole podcast on items. We want items to have their own history and narrative and all those kinds of things. They need to contribute to story and character development.
But then again, Ben, you're crafting an item, so it does need to have all those things.
Yeah, no, that's right. It does. We've got to have something that meets the conditions for a good item at the end of the day. But this is not something that's just handed to the players. This is something that they're going to build in most cases.
Contribute to, yeah.
That's right. So first of all, let's make sure we're clear on what kinds of things we're talking about when we're crafting. Mark, what kinds of things do people craft?
I mean, it could be swords, armor. It could be potions. It could be, poisons. It could be all sorts of stuff. You look at the tool proficiencies in Dungeons and Dragons. Those are all made to create things, most of them. So, all those things could be potential items that players may want to build and incorporate into their games.
Now, crafting rules in D&D are have been all over the map historically. And I
Yeah.
think one of the things I noticed about 5th edition, and I'm talking about the 2014 rules, in the 2024 rules, I think it got a little better. But the idea is it still takes a long time in D&D
Yeah.
rules is written to like craft things. So has it always been like that? Was it easier in earlier editions?
The only edition I would say crafting was fairly easy in was 3.5.
Okay.
And the reason why is because they monetized what the cost was for these abilities you could get on weapons. And they had them all listed out like these are what you could get.
So if you have a +1 sword, we know it costs sword cost plus X.
And if you wanted enhanced sharpness on it, they had a cost for that. So just by doing that, it allowed you to kind of easily do that for crafting. You want to do this, this is what it's going to cost.
Now, one of the things I'm kind of having a hard time with in the 5e rules is written, which is why I think a lot of our discussion here today is going to go off on like homebrew rules and things like that, is because it takes a lot of time too, right? Like when you're an adventurer, you're on the road, you're going out and running around in dungeons and exploring the map and all that kind of stuff. You don't have like a blacksmith's forge with you all the time. You can't do 8 hours of work for weeks and weeks and weeks unless you're basically doing it like between adventures. And then you're like, all right, guys, I need about like a 3-month break, you know?
Well, honestly, though, Ben, in a story what you're running, that could be a possibility. There could be gaps in the story where you're like, your characters are going to have 3 months of downtime. Find something to do. So, like, that's all up to the GM. Let's not worry about the time it takes in game because that's for the table to work out. Let's think about like the crafting and why it's the pitfalls of it, because there are some major pitfalls you could fall into with having items crafted that go astray.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that. I'm going to hang a little flag on this, you guys, is that if your players are expecting to be able to craft stuff on the go, and for some of them, maybe it's not for a sword, but like potions or other things, if they take a long time to make, you're not going to see them make too many of those things if the cost is too high time-wise.
And also, like, because of how difficult crafting is, it might be something that you want to reserve and let your players know, like, I can't do this every week. Like, let's pick our moments. Let's pick our times.
Interesting. I suppose I'm thinking about a lot of occasions where somebody's like, okay, it's time for a long rest. Everybody kind of beds down for the night and everybody's thinking about what they do. Sleep is only part of what you do and a long rest, or in the kind of the overnight. I'm guessing other games have their versions of this, right? But I'm assuming that somebody's putting in an hour or two of crafting time too, if they've got something they're working on.
Yeah. And let's face it, not all crafts take the same amount of time. You know, making some arrowheads may take a lot less time than making a pseudo armor.
Right. Yeah, presumably.
You know, potion making, I don't know. Potion making probably doesn't seem like it would take an exorbitant amount of time.
Yeah.
So just think about the time constraints for that craft. And, you know, if it's potions and somebody wants to make a lot of them, just think about what you're comfortable with. You know, what do you want to include in your game?
Yeah, so let's get to that point that you wanted to talk about like kind of how powerful they are and balance and things like that. I mean, we've been talking about the inputs of time and cost. And so that's one way to, I think, find the balance of how often they can get these items or how powerful these items can be, because you could have really costly ingredients or they could take a long time to do. So Mark, talk about a little bit about like how powerful should a crafted item be? I mean, is this going to be as good or better than anything that somebody might come across that's in a loot pile in a dragon's lair? Or
No, it should be appropriate for the level of that character.
okay,
I mean, let's face it. You don't want to unbalance your game. And I will tell you, Ben, 100% of the time, players will come out with an item that's overpowered.
so if players are left to craft their own stuff, they're always
Yes.
going to kind of craft a little bit higher than they probably should.
100% of the time. So as a GM, you don't even start this project if you're a GM if you're a pushover, don't do it,
Right.
because they're going to run right over you with this item. You have to be thoughtful about the item, and you have to be thoughtful about the balance at the table. because everybody's going to be looking at that item and going, man, I want to make one now too. And so you got to be thoughtful about like this item, because it's going to be OP the way they design it. And you might be in for a battle if that player is sensitive about criticism. So you're going to get criticism. You're going to have to be doing a lot of criticism. So be ready for that. It can be a headache, but if you have a good relationship with your players, maybe it's not that big of a deal.
Well, and I think it's almost like it's a microcosm of the overall game, right? Like it does depend on a lot of goodwill between the players and the GM and so forth. So one thing I think could also help with that though, right, is if you've got players that are just looking to kind of ladder up the power level, so to speak, if they want to get the +2 sword because their +1 isn't good enough and that's what everybody has, like that's a whole different kind of person. But like, I think there's something really cool about helping players come up with unique utility items that interact with their class, or that maybe are connected to their background in some way, or that can do just weird, interesting stuff that maybe you wouldn't expect. And you can use existing items as kind of an inspiration for this. So they have, for example, like a jug of ever-flowing water or something like that. I can't remember exactly what it's called, but it's basically like this jug that you can tip it over and water will just continually come out of it. What if that could be something else? What if it was lamp oil? What if it was any one of a number of other kind of items? Blood could be an option.
I made a shield in a game that was an immovable shield, like the immovable rod.
Oh wow!
Like,
how did that go?
I don't know. I just made it. It hasn't been used yet. We'll see. I don't know. It could be as cool as the player uses it. But I don't think it's game breaking. I don't think it's any more game breaking than some of the other things you could have in there, until it is.
Yeah, we're gonna find out. And that kind of discovery is fun though too, right? Yeah. Like one of the things that's neat is when you create items that have interesting lateral applications, players are inspired to become more creative with that kind of thing. And then that may put you in sort of weird spots, and you're going to have to come up with great stuff. And frankly, friends, that's the joy of the whole crafting thing, I think.
Yeah. And I would say one of my earliest memories of Dungeons and Dragons, and when I was playing in second edition, one of my first characters was a crafter, and I just remember making items for players in the group, for the other players, and how fun that was, that we had these original cool swords and whatever armor. And I just remember that being a point of joy around the table, that we had handmade items from another character.
Yeah, really wonderful. Well, okay, so we've been talking about some of the challenges of crafting. We talked about some of the different kinds of crafting in terms of potions and other things. Special inputs, I think, are things that we want to use to keep people from kind of going nuts with all this stuff. And crafting can create its own, because of the rarity of those inputs, it can create its own quests too, right? Like if you need basilisk eyes for this thing you're going to craft, you got to go find a basilisk somewhere. That's not just on the open market, probably.
Yeah, you might need rare metals. You might need, herbs that are only found on your volcanoes. I mean, crafting itself could be a vehicle to kind of have an adventure. Like, maybe you've run in a campaign for a long time and you need just like a little detour where they're fighting something different. This could be a good way to like get them on a one shot away from the main character's, campaign storyline, to just get maybe a certain mythical item to craft something. It could be just fun.
Yeah, it could be that. I mean, and also, but to your point, like you could also weave it into the main storyline in the sense that, look, the only way to kill this bad guy is to, get a piece of iron that came from the smithy that he had when he was a level 1 bad guy or something. Like you could have all kinds of interesting things
only
to do.
The Hattori Hanzo sword.
That's right.
Cut this man down.
That's right. Yeah, it's going to take Hanzo steel to get that.
It's going to take Hanzo steel. So just items should be part of the storytelling. So weave that into your story. Find ways to make it exciting for the players, and get them involved with the creation process, because eventually this is going to be theirs, and you want them to feel that kind of pride in having made it.
Yeah. Now, we were talking about inputs for a moment. One of the things that you've done is having monsters have components and things you can harvest from them. I think that's a kind of
Yes.
interesting thing. Tell me about how it is that we get all kinds of weirdo stuff. I mean, do people have to kind of come up with taxonomies of what kinds of things you can harvest in all the different monsters and what kind of plants are in what kind of different environments? Like, how do we get started if we're going to start looking at all kinds of exotic materials out there in the world?
Yeah, I mean, how would you get started with that? I've used this website called the Thieves Guild. They have this harvesting kind of guide on there that I use. And there's all sorts of ways you can do it. You can kind of wing it if you need to. I find that if I can just allow them to kind of do the outsourcing for that. So there are tools out there for you guys that can allow you to harvest things in your games of Dungeons and Dragons. I
Yeah.
referenced the Thieves Guild. I know there are other things like within Foundry, if you're playing virtually, there are mods that people have made that have harvesting as part of it. So there's no shortage of tools out there if you're looking for it. I recommend using them because if you could just outsource some of that labor on some other tool, then do it.
Yeah.
Um,
We're big fans of shortcuts like that. I'll say this, though. I think that if you are a GM and you're in the middle of a game and you want to start introducing this stuff, the first thing to do is to look at what kinds of special abilities creatures have.
yes.
So if this is a creature that shoots electricity, it's like a blue dragon, let's say, then maybe he's got crystals inside him.
You could even have existing items that, like, we had a game where a player got a displacer cloak, and they actually got that made from the skin of a displacer that they defeated. None of the players made it, but they actually took the skin and had it made.
Yeah.
So even that there's a story behind that item. It's no longer just a item they found in a chest somewhere. It was a creature they actually felled and skinned and had it made.
Yeah. So the first thing I'd look at is look at the. So the first thing I'd say is look at the kinds of monsters you're fighting, see what their special abilities are, and that can provide a great basis for that. But then also, when you're looking at the different kinds of environments you're in,
Mhm.
think about the kinds of plants and natural resources that might be there. So if you're in a desert, maybe there are various kinds of plants and other things that store moisture, and you could have some kind of water source, or you could have ingredients that come from special plants that do that. Or maybe because, as cactuses are an example of this, maybe they've got natural defenses to protect that moisture that can then be used as a part of recipes that you have. Like you could get cactus needles or other things like that. And the more creative you are with this, the more fun it'll be. But like there's so many things you could do. In Arctic environments, there'll be a different set of plants and things. In temperate environments, there's still others yet. So there's all kinds of options you could have if you start thinking about what kind of world you're in and what kinds of environmental challenges the various kinds of flora are in there. So that's a way of starting to build a catalog. And one of the neat ways that that can help you early on is that you don't need to have an entire catalog of stuff, because you have a story as a GM. You may be able to just say, here's the story I've got. This is the direction it's going to go. I know it's going through a desert, or I know it's going through an Arctic tundra or something like that. And so I know generally what kinds of creatures are there. I know generally what kind of plants are there. And I can just focus on some of those kinds of things.
So Ben, we were kind of talking about this a little bit with a group of friends recently, and there was kind of a bit of a back and forth about whether or not like people were customizing and crafting in this newer edition of Dungeons and Dragons. I say newer edition; it's 5th edition. It's been around for quite a while, actually.
Mm-hmm.
And there seems to be kind of a consensus that not many people are crafting, and I don't actually know if that's true or not. And I almost want to say I don't think that is true. I think it has to do with that we don't do as much of it as we used to.
That might be. I definitely think the expectation's different. I think part of the thing is if the rules made it look like in order to get a really great effect, you were probably going to be better off spending your time running around dungeons as opposed to sitting around someplace where you had an access to a smithy or a potion shop or whatever, trying to brew up your own stuff. So the thing is, though, is I think that's actually a function of the kind of characters you have more than it's a function of what the rules are.
I don't know. And I just know that like when we played second edition, we did a lot of crafting, and we didn't do any in 3.5, and we did very little in fifth. My contention was a little bit was that the rules are so good in fifth edition. They're tight and they're so well rounded that it makes it difficult to craft in. Whereas second edition was such a mess. It was all over the place. It made it easy to craft in because there was a lot of room for like error in that game because there was
Yeah.
already so much error intrinsically in the game. If that makes any
Funny.
sense.
Yeah, kind of. Here's my take on it is I think that in fourth edition, especially, but fifth edition as well, these are very powerful characters typically. They typically have a lot of great things they can do.
Yeah.
They typically have a lot of really
They
cool
feel
abilities and
so much
spells.
more heroic
Yeah.
out the gate.
You look at a second edition character, and especially at early levels, maybe less so as you go on, but these are characters who you can feel the dirt under their fingernails. These guys are going to miss a lot when they swing a sword at normal enemies. It's not going to be a default assumption they're going to win a lot of their encounters. And so when you give a second edition party a crafted item, man, it's got a lot of effect. It's really a game changer for those guys. Whereas if you give something to a fifth edition party, they're not like the second edition party. The second edition party needs all the help it can get.
Yeah, that +1 sword in second edition felt like you just like, oh my gosh, I won the lottery. Like I can actually survive now.
Yeah. So I think that's a part of what's doing the work here is that if your characters tend to be very powerful or super heroic, then your crafting is going to have to produce things that are worth somebody that powerful's time creating an impact for them. And I think that's something that we're very reluctant to do typically at this level in D&D. But if you were in a second edition game, having something that could give you back like a D6 hit points or something, or having something that would increase your to hit number by like 1 point, God, you could use all the help you could get. That was the most important thing.
They had entire books, just massive books of magic items.
Yeah.
I mean, Dragon Magazine put out churned out every month magic items and stuff. So it was a game that had a lot of, and I would call a lot of that stuff homebrew. It was made outside the realm of the canon books, and it had that kind of like homebrew feel to it. Some of that stuff was whacked out, crazy powerful, but it was a lot of fun. And I would just say, like, have fun, you guys, when you're building these things. Don't forget that we're here to have a good time with some of your items. You might find that you might have broken part of the game. You could always eke it back. Talk to that player and say, man, you know what? I made a bit of a mistake. So we're just going to tweak that item a little bit. But don't be afraid to have a good time, though.
Yeah. That's one of the things you could reliably do, though, right? It was our friend Randy said, back in second edition, when somebody had an item that was too powerful, that's what rust monsters were for.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember him throwing those at me. But we've had
still bitter about it there.
Maybe just a little bit.
Sore?
Maybe just a little bit. But we've had some fun with some custom magic items. I think in our games we didn't use a lot of them in our other games, but the ones we did make, they tend to be the ones that are the most fun, weren't they?
I think so. I think once you, as you said, once you have that sort of pride of ownership in crafting, once you have that pride of creating, I guess, I think that's a big part of it. The other thing I think, though, too, just getting back to some of this balance thing, give the players more opportunity to have disposable benefits. A scroll or a potion is something that they'll use once.
Yeah.
And then if it turned out it was too powerful, well,
they used it.
Don't let them do it again.
Yeah. It's the weapons and armor you have to be very careful of.
Yeah.
I would even emphasize even more so the armor than the weapons.
That's really true in fifth, yeah. Because remember, friends, that the AC is not supposed to scale linearly. It's only supposed to go up a little at a time.
Yeah. So when you incorporate that +2 armor, you're just like, ooh. I can't hit that player anymore. Like
Yeah.
I'm having a real tough time as a GM now. So just be
Yeah.
thoughtful. But these are things you're going to learn the more you run games, you're going to know what those limitations are. The longer you play with your group of friends, the more trust you build between each other, so that when you do have to kind of eke back and say, I made a mistake, they're understanding.
Right. We're all here to have fun playing the same game, and to the extent that items distort that, ideally your players are going to be willing to help you correct things.
I think we talked about all we can on crafting, haven't we, Ben?
I think this is good. Friends, if you haven't listened to our episode on items, I'd recommend going and checking that out too. It's a nice companion piece to this discussion.
Yes.
And in 2 more weeks, we will come back to you with another episode of Tabletop Tune Up. I think we're probably going to do a Broken Compass review.
Oh, I can't wait to do that.
Should we do that?
That's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
You can already tell what I think about the game.
Yeah, I had a great time with it, but boy, it took a minute to wrap my head around that game. So
It did.
we're going to have a fun discussion about that in a couple weeks. And until then, keep those dice rolling.
Tune up, level up your fun. Tune up, your quest has now begun. Tune up, we'll show you how it's done. Tune up, tune up. Tune up, tune up. Your RPG's dragging lost in the same old scene. But these two roll up, bringing power unforeseen. No tired tropes, no predictable line. They craft realms with a depth that'll blow your mind. Legends in the game, call them sages of the board. When they're setting the scene, you're never ignored. Roll the dice, spin the fate, watch it unfold. They're turning the mundane into stories of gold. One's the storyteller, words so rich and refined. The other's the rule keeper, precise on the grind. Together they're a force, a perfectly balanced scheme. Every session they run feels like a living dream. Tune up, tune up. Tune up, tune up. Heroes rise, villains plot, epic battles ignite. With twists and turns that last deep into the night. They're the kings of narrative, masters of the arc, guiding each game from the spark to the dark. So if your game's feeling flat, lost and unfixed, these two will rebuild it with the slickest tricks.